If young Canadians hope to grow up to play like Wayne Gretzky, their parents wanted to live up to the example set by Wayne's father. Walter Gretzky is being remembered this morning as this country's all-time hockey dad, as much a legend of our game as his son. Word came from the family late last night that Walter Gretzky had died. He was 82. He dealt with Parkinson's disease for many years. Stories about him, Wayne, and that backyard rink are now woven into our national fabric. Superstardom put his son on hockey's highest pedestal, but for generations of Canadians, Walter always seemed like the kind of guy you could chat with on a Saturday morning down at the local arena.
Oh, I would just tell him to play good.
And he did, didn't he? He played good. Father and son moment is captured on a CBC documentary from 1996. It features grainy footage of young Wayne, that iconic backyard rink. There's video of Walter sharing his love of the game with another generation of players. And the moment as well where you're going to see Walter showing off a pair of Wayne's childhood skates and revealing some of his own hockey know-how.
You can see his name at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And they are rockered. I don't know, difficult for me to do that.
Yeah.
You can see there isn't much blade touching.
No.
That's what it means to be rockered.
So you only got about an inch on the ice.
Right. And the more rockered they are, the quicker you can turn. And of course, that was Wayne's game, the quick turns.
It's everything I am was because of him. I mean, it's as simple as that. And by that, I mean, I can remember being 11 and 12 years old and driving to games and my dad saying, you know, this is an unfair situation for you because you're only 11 or 12 years old, but there's going to be a lot of people there to watch you play tonight.
Wayne Gretzky echoing that tribute in his social media message last night that announced his father's death, saying, "For me, he was the reason I fell in love with the game of hockey. He inspired me to be the best I could be, not just in the game of hockey, but in life." We're sharing tributes and remembrances today, and look who's with us to begin our hour. CBC Sports' Rob Pizzo, our hockey guy, and so great to see you at this particular moment, Rob, from home. You know, we call him Canada's hockey dad, represented that to a whole country. So many questions to ask you, but why don't we begin right there with the mark he made by bringing his son. Everything his son can claim, really, he traces back to his dad.
Yeah, Heather, it's interesting. We call him, you know, Canada's hockey dad, as you mentioned, but there are a lot of famous hockey players who I have no idea who their father is. Walter just was so integral in helping create the great one as we know him. I mean, you know, he always talks about that we've heard so much about the Wally Coliseum, you know, the backyard rink. And he always said people would always criticize me because they thought I was trying to build this superstar. But it was really just self-preservation. Wayne would drag him to outdoor rinks at the park. Walter would be sitting there freezing. He thought, how could I let Wayne, you know, continue this passion and, you know, be warm in my kitchen watching him through, you know, a glass window. So he built the Wally Coliseum. And from there, I mean, the rest is just history, as we like to say. And he's so integral, not only in Wayne Gretzky's career, but just in hockey as a whole. I mean, I don't know any other hockey dads who signed autographs or had to sign autographs their entire career, Heather, but I remember being at a Leaf game and Walter Gretzky, who had season tickets, would watch the game for 20 minutes and then in between periods would stand up and sign autographs the entire intermission. In this country, everyone knows Wayne Gretzky, and everyone knew Walter Gretzky.
Just by one name, by Walter. You know, you're quite
Walter,
right. You saw that happen at a Leafs game, and I saw it happen at a charity golf tournament I was at that he was involved in. Yeah. I mean, I think thousands of Canadians have watched that experience. There was a particular connection between Walter Gretzky and Canadians. What was it that, you know, bound him so closely to the hearts of Canadians?
That's a really good question, Heather, because, you know, like I said, it's interesting when someone who is famous and doesn't really do anything. It wasn't as though Walter was scoring the points. It wasn't as though Walter was winning Stanley Cups, but he was always there. And I think that's maybe the key to it. I mean, there are famous stories of Glenn Sather, who, of course, was the coach of those great Oiler teams, would say, if Wayne wasn't playing very well, my first call was to Walter. And he would call Walter and say, do you have any time off from work? Because check this out, Heather. Even though Wayne Gretzky was the best player on planet Earth, Walter still continued to work at Bell Canada. But he would fly Walter out to the games because he knew that Wayne always played better with Walter in the stands. And anyone who played hockey in this country can kind of relate to that. I knew I played better when my dad was in the stands. So every time Wayne was breaking a record, every time Wayne was doing something great, inevitably there'd be the shot of Walter in the stands. I mean, Wayne and Walter were linked so much more than, I know for them it's father-son, but for people like myself who grew up idolizing, as you could see by the jersey behind me, everything Wayne Gretzky did,
yes,
Walter was just a part of that.
That's right, part of that fabric. Wayne Gretzky, in his social media post, called him our team captain. And maybe that's how Canadians see that. Devotion to family, devotion to the game. We're sharing stories, Rob. I don't know if you've watched earlier, but so many people sharing how they met Walter or the encounters and paying tribute. We're going to bring up a picture. This is pre-beard. This is pre-Pizzo beard with you and Walter.
Yes,
and tell us the story. Tell us the story of this one, Rob.
Well, I've had the pleasure of kind of dealing with Walter professionally. I've interviewed him. I've wrangled him for interviews. But this was an interesting one. I was away. I was out of town covering something for CBC, or I believe it was CBC at the time. And there was Walter at the rink. And I struck up a conversation with him. And I had mentioned that because I was out of town, I was missing my men's league hockey playoff game, which I know to a lot of people isn't a big deal. I was kind of, upset that I'd be missing such a big game. So what does Walter do for me? We grab my phone. He sends a good luck message to the rest of my teammates.
Really?
Who does that? I mean, who decides this guy who I just really met 5 minutes ago is missing a men's league game, which, let's be honest, does not mean that much, and says, hey, you know what? Cobalt Silver Kings, Rob can't be there, but good luck in your game. I thought it was just such a great moment. And he just seems like that guy. Like I said, I've met him and dealt with him in, we'll call them 5-minute, 10-minute increments, Heather. Mm-hmm. But if I always walked away from that situation saying, I wish I could just sit down and just pick his brain and hear stories, because he was always willing to do, things for fans and share stories. It's legend that when Wayne Gretzky was the best player in the world, all you had to do was knock on their door in Brantford and he'd say, come on in, see the trophy room.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you ever get to the trophy room? Did you ever get to the trophy room yourself?
I did. I never got there, but like I said, he would do things like that, and that's what your earlier question about why Canadians felt so close to him. I mean, that was one of the reasons. He just wanted to connect with them. Most people, if you are Wayne Gretzky's father, like I said with that Leaf game, they maybe would have someone there to say, guys, stay away, leave him alone. No, Walter wanted to sign those autographs. He would sign them W. Gretzky because, the other guy has a W as well. But fans just felt connected to, anyone who has strapped on a pair of skates and played hockey in this country has a hockey dad, has a hockey mom, has a hockey parent who they looked up to. And he just kind of was right in that group. And I mean, it's a sad day, but it's a good day to kind of think back to when you think of Walter, what do you think of? And the stories for me are infinite. Kindness,
Generosity, humility, the smile. Yeah. Can you see us if I pull up a picture on air? I want to show you something outside Brantford.
Unfortunately, I can't.
You can't. Okay, I'm not sure the technology, but for people watching us, Brantford, Ontario, of course, their home, and there is the Wayne Gretzky Sports Centre there, where they pay tribute. There's a sculpture called The Great One. Part is Gretzky himself, but there's also this part here, which is just so important. It speaks to exactly what you're talking about, Rob. There is Walter, Phyllis, his mom, who passed away in 2005, and a young Wayne. But it just speaks again to this influence of family and this lifelong bond, father and son.
And it's one of those things, Heather, where you didn't see one without the other, and no one seemed to mind. Sometimes you have overbearing parents in sports. No one ever said that about Walter Gretzky. They thought, there's Walter, Wally, as his close friends called him. And that's why it was called the Wally Coliseum, which, man, that place is now legend.
Rob, thank you so much. Really appreciate your photo and your thoughts and your memories. That's what we're sharing this morning. Rob Pizzo this morning.